My name is Stella. I am currently a master's student doing a degree in Community and Regional Planning. So I'm from UBC SCARP, which stands for the School of Community and Regional Planning. It's a very long degree. It's actually my graduate program, so I did my undergrad in geography at UBC. So I'm a proud geography graduate. And when I was in undergrad, my major was actually in environment and sustainability, to be specific. So I'm neither a human geographer or a physical geographer. I'm more kind of in between, which I find is actually a great spot to begin with.
Do you define yourself as a geographer? Why or why not?
Yes, I definitely define myself as a geographer. I feel like people, especially in planning, kind of ask you what your background is, because for most planning degrees, you don't do it as an undergrad, you do it as your grad degree. Well, first of all, I'm a geographer because I have a degree in it, but I think the degree it's a paper by the end of the day. Honestly, I think I'm a geographer because I think like a geographer. More specifically, I feel like I care a lot about how people interact with the environment and how the world works. So geography for me, it's really about not just space, but also place, and also people interacting with the environment, whether it's the natural environment or the built environment like cities. So in a way, I think geography is such a huge topic that it encompasses so many different themes and different issues, and I care about things in that complicated way, and that's why I feel like I'm a geographer. And I also like maps, but not all geographers like maps, but I like maps a lot.
What drew you to the discipline of geography?
Well, I think it's the interdisciplinary nature of geography. So like I mentioned above, geography, it's never just about geography. When you kind of talk to people about, oh, so what do you learn in geography? Especially for people who are still in high school or younger ages, they kind of define geography as, oh, it rains, how the earth works, where's this country or this continent. But honestly, once you actually get into the degree of geography or the field of geography, you realize that it's about more than what people usually think. So I think that's what attracts me, because I'm not only learning about how the world works, but I also learn about the human society, the different ways of learning, the different perspective. And geography allows me to think in different perspectives. I think that's very important. And it really allows you to think critically about issues, because geography makes you realize that it's not just the world, it's not that simple. The world consists of so many different factors that could affect and influence each other. Hence, I think that's why it really attracted me, because I don't need to decide on one single thing, because usually there isn't a solution for most of the geography questions out there. It's a complex issue, you can't really solve it. And that's actually the beauty of it. It's not about solving it, it's about the process of thinking about how we could possibly reach to a destination that could create a better world that we are in now. So that's kind of what got me to geography, is just I don't need to decide. I'm able to really expand my skills and learn whatever I feel like applies most, or learn what I feel like I care about the most. So when I was an undergrad, I cared the most about sustainability. So that means I could learn a little bit of how the world works, geology, but also learn a lot about urban issues, social issues, and that kind of combines to be my degree. So there really isn't one way to define geography. I think that's the beauty of it.
What geographical research approaches were you trained in, and what geographical research approaches do you use in your research today?
I feel like there's so many tools out there for geographers these days, especially with technology. The ones that I personally like the most, if I got trained most, is qualitative analysis and also GIS. So qualitative, it can mean a lot. I personally enjoy doing qualitative because I actually get to interact with people for a lot of reasons. Because one of the most common method is interviews, like what we're doing now. Focus groups, interviews, surveys, actually going out to community to talk to people to kind of get what their experience is. I think that is the best part of doing qualitative research, because you don't just get to look at data the whole day, but actually get to find the meaning behind those data. And that being said, quantitative analysis is still very important. And GIS, because I love maps, GIS became a huge, not just hobby and interest, but something that I even use today in grad school is GIS analysis. Because when you look at maps, it's more about what's on the surface. GIS analysis, it stands for Geographic Information System, if you don't know the acronym for that. It also stands for Geographic Information Sciences, so those are two different terms. You'll learn more when you actually get into a degree, but basically it's a field or a set of skills you have to use maps and big data to analyze things geospatially. So you need to connect human data with the spatial data. So some things I've done using GIS analysis is like, for example, Vancouver, we're at the coast, but if a flood happens, where would be drowned? So that's one thing you can actually use GIS to figure out is really analyze which neighborhood will be drowned, how many people will be affected, looking at the census data. So these are all really useful geographical research tools that I still use today. Because as a planner, you're also looking at cities and built form, and then space and people. So yeah, these two skills, I think, research method is really complementing each other and works really well.
Can you explain your research problem and what framing and methods you're using to approach it? Are these uniquely geographic framings or methods?
Well, so my research focus at SCAR, because I'm a planning student now, I'm looking into how cities and its built form affects people's health and well-being. So it's looking into what ways are we designing cities, what ways are we really thinking about the neighborhood scale, and also thinking about what in this neighborhood or in this city could affect people's health and well-being. So things like how the streets are laid out, how parks are being connected, how could people access public transit, all these are the built environment, and these are geographical. So one thing that I say a lot is where you live, so your postal code, pretty much partly define how healthy and how happy you are, because the environment you live in really affect your daily life. That being said, you could live in a neighborhood that is deemed unhealthy. For example, you live in a sprawling neighborhood in a suburban area and you drive a lot, but that doesn't mean that you're not a happy person. That is probably your personal choice. So it's also very important to think about personal experience. It's not only looking at where people live, but also why they choose to live there. So my research is really using, again, GIS analysis, so looking at where people are living, what their environment is like, but also using qualitative analysis to really interview people, having focus group, and ask them why they choose to live there and how their built environment has affected them. So it's definitely trying to think from a more intersectional lens, not just looking things from one angle, because you never know why, for a lot of cases, people choose to live where they live and how that affects their own health and well-being.
What do you think are some of the most pressing issues we face as humans?
There are so many answers to this because, well, first of all, pressing issues. We are, in a way, humans are doomed. I would say humans are, we are our biggest nemesis at this point. Every single issue we look at, whether it's climate change, colonialism, consumerism, waste, sustainability, social justice, and equality, it all comes back to human behavior, human thinking. And I think geography helps because we are the problem. Humans are the problem, and how we live in this world is the root of all the problem and the pressing issues we have today, whether it's political or social or environmental. So it's really hard to change human behavior. It could take decades, if not centuries, to really affect or impact human behavior as a whole society and a whole world. But I think geography allows people, at the very least, to realize that they are not individuals living in this world. Because after all, we are unique, each person is unique. I totally understand that everyone have their own experience, but by the end of the day, we're part of a bigger thing. We're not just one single human being in this world. And geography allows us to realize that. Even just learning, as simple as looking at the map, learning how to read a map, make us care more about the one room we're sitting in right now. I think that is what geography helps, is really to help people realize that they aren't alone, and anything they do has a small impact, whether it's positive or negative. And that could be a good start to like many, hopefully more positive changes to solve those pressing issues that we have today, such as climate change. Like, there are positive things happening. We can't really stop climate change, but I feel like if people do care a little more than just themselves and actually know the geography of their life or their world, it would help them to realize that they could do a little something about all those pressing issues we have out there, which is like a lot.
If you could share one book or film with learners, what would it be and why?
One book or film, what? That's so hard. Well, I'll recommend one film that I watched recently that had quite a bit of impact on me personally, at least. And it's again tying back to thinking about that you are more than just yourself. The film is called Sisnam, The City Before the City. So it's actually a film talking about the whole debate and story behind the Musqueam Nation, First Nations in Vancouver, and how they were really trying to protest and protect their ancestral land when the city decided to build condominium on top of their original land, which is Sisnam. It's around the Marple area. So that really affected me, because for me, being like an Asian woman, I find it really hard to position myself in the whole like colonial conversation. I'm not white, but yes, I'm a settler. But in some ways, I feel like I've also been colonized in many ways. So it's really hard for me to think clearly where do I lie within the spectrum of colonialism. But that film really made me like reflect a lot more on why am I studying planning, why am I studying geography, and whose land we're on, and what every single city is built on. There's a history underneath every single city, and that film says something. We always talk about us in Vancouver as a new city. We always talk like Vancouver is only like 100-something years old, but Vancouver is more than Vancouver. There's so many more names, so many more people before Vancouver was even like a thing, before everyone currently living in Vancouver, of course apart from the First Nations groups that came, all the people that's not First Nations and Indigenous came in the past 200-300 years, and that film made you realize that every single one of us have something to contribute to this history. And it's not just about us, it's about everyone that came before you. So yeah, I recommend people who live in Vancouver especially to go watch that movie or film. And even if you're not in Vancouver, if you're in North America, you're probably on some type of like ancestral land of the First Nation group and Indigenous group. So go watch that film and think about what your city means to you, and what your city and the land you're standing on means to the people who were here thousands and millions of years before you.
Do you have any future career plans, and how will your geography degree prepare you for these plans?
Future career plans for a grad student is always a taboo question to ask. But yes, of course. I mean, the whole point of me getting into grad school and doing planning is because I was quite sure that I want to become a planner as my profession. So going back a little bit, the whole reason why I choose to do a graduate degree in planning and not geography is I realized that I just want to actually go out and kind of make a bigger impact. Not saying that geographers don't make an impact, but geography is a very academic profession. And if I do a master in geography, I could continue on doing research and doing like more, gathering more information and really maybe coming up with something new in this field. But I realized that research is great. At the same time, you can't really solve everything with just research. You need to actually go out there and have some idea of how you can make things better. So I think that's when planning comes in. So for example, in geography, we talk a lot about like gentrification is bad, or like climate change is bad, and we do a lot of research around it. But planning is more on recognizing what is negative out there and somehow figuring out a way to make those negative things a little less negative and hopefully positive, so that we could live a better life. So that's why I become a planner, because I realized that I just want to like do more than just doing research. I want to actually go out there and help communities to really build a better environment for people to live in, and to, in a way, amend the already bad things we've done to this world and the cities. So that's kind of my career plan. How long will it take for me to get there? Who knows? It's never straight. Career is never straight. And by the end of the day, I think geography is really actually closely connected to planning. Because after all, we're looking at cities, we're looking at the environment, and that's exactly what planners are looking at too. It's just planners are a bit more political because we are being pushed by like political agendas, politicians who want certain things to get done. But by the end of the day, it is about the people in the environment. So geography degree helped me a lot just through giving me that perspective and giving those skills to be able to look at things from multiple angles and really proudly say that I am a geographer.